Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Sri Lakshmi, for giving us a platform to interact. It's my great pleasure to welcome all the panel members. I'll quickly introduce them one by one, and then we'll proceed with that. Professor Singh is a techno business leader with 35 years of experience with global technology companies. He has held various global leadership positions in his long career with Fujitsu, Telabs, Lucent, AT&T, and later Alcatel-Lucent. As an Asia Pacific head of Alcatel-Lucent University, he has set up 24 campuses in all the major countries in that region, and also been chief learning officer at the Geo University, and has set up 29 centers all over the country. He is also holding the position as Dean E-commerce at the moment with ISB. I'm sorry. He has also held the position of Dean E-commerce Academy with Flipkart for some time, and is currently holding the position in ISB at leadership level in the digitizing education. He is doing his PhD. Welcome to the group, sir. in IIM Indore in the field of human capital development, leveraging digital and AI, artificial intelligence. I welcome Professor Antapreet Singh. Professor Vikas Madhukar is specialized in finance and strategy and holds his doctorate in international finance from Kurukshetra University. Is presently working as professor and director at Amity University, Gurugram, heading the management school and the admissions vertical. He has a rich and varied experience of over 20 years in teaching, training, research, consultancy, and administration. He's published more than 60 research papers in leading national and international journals and supervised many PhDs. He has a rich source. He is a resource person and trainer in various public and private sector organizations like Ericsson, Keen India, Food Corporation of India, and QLT Software, etc. He's been mentoring budding entrepreneurs in converting their ideas into business and further helping them in translating into successful startups. As a mentor and coach, he has led several initiatives and reforms in teaching, academic administration, and students' enrollment. Welcome to the panel, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Dr. Saili Gankar, she is currently Vice Chancellor at esteemed University, D.Y. Patil University, Pune, having 30 years of experience in institution building, academic, and research. Previously, she has worked as the Dean Management of PG programs, Dean for Academics, Director Admissions at MIT World Peace University. She has handled role of the director for two key institutes of MIT School of Management and MIT College of Management. She is appointed as a chairman and a member of various committees at state and the private universities, government, industry, and non-governmental organizations. Welcome, Vice Chancellor, Madam. Our next panelist is Meenakshi Elangovan. Meenakshi Elangovan has master's degree in geography and public administration and advanced diploma in curriculum design. She has been an educator for more than 20 years for high school students and is currently working as head of professional development at Inventure Academy, K-12 International School in Bangalore. She is passionate about equipping teachers with pedagogy and skill sets to develop learning experiences for students that help young learners to think, solve problems, communicate ideas, and have interest to better themselves and their society. She has also spearheaded the team where Inventor moved from a regular brick and mortar school to an online learning platform, so switch altogether. Working closely with team members, she has developed a model that provides engaging and interesting learning experiences into consideration of student wellness and holistic development. Welcome, Meenakshi ma'am, to the panel.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Now, it has been great pleasure here to initiate this particular discussion on bridging the skill gaps. All the previous panelists in the previous things have mostly stressed out that we need to have these skill gaps connected because the traditional teaching and the online teaching, though the content may remain same, but the presentation of the content, the development of certain concepts, they take a different kind of shape altogether. So therefore, it's more or less more important. We'll be discussing right from K-12 level to the university level. So we have a full-fledged panel. We'll discuss K-12 level as well as the higher education and the university education as well. To begin with, I would just quickly like to share my presentation. No, not much, hardly about 5 or 6 slides. Bridging skill gaps in the new normal. The present scenario, change in the ecosystem of education is at the speed of light and is exponential. I was reminded of that book by Bill Gates, Business at the Speed of Light. And now I realize not only business, everything is moving at the speed of light, especially after the pandemic, or at least we are aware that it is changing so fast. Digital transformation is happening, which has digitization, mobilization, augmentation, and disintermediation. So all these processes are helping us to transform. It is not upgrading, it is transformation. This is leading to disruption, which has become a new normal now. Now this disruption has been now, we are well aware, is because of the COVID, where we are more aware of that. COVID has forced us to take more seriously and meet the challenges. This empowered learning model or digital learning model, I have just adapted from Intel, who has done the white paper on 2015. The organization has presented 7 actually items or 7 pointers, whereas I've just collected only 5 just to suit the need of the hour. It is the leadership, the digital policies, ICT tools, digital content, and the assessment. So leadership is at the helm of any change that we are going to bring out. Without leadership, there is no go. So if the leader has very clear vision about digital transformation, nothing will happen. So leadership is the most important part in this particular. Based upon his ideas, he will definitely develop digital policies which are customer centric. And these digital policies will help the students as well as the faculty to go ahead, or any digital learner and the user, or I should say digital consumer, will move forward. Based upon that, we design and identify different ICT tools for using in the classroom situation. Now, therefore, these ICT tools will have different platforms, they will have different languages to be used. All that has to be developed if at all we are aiming at empowering our learner. Not only tools are sufficient, we need digital content also. So digital content has to be developed, which of course is a great task. And if the student is not assessed and certified at the end of the program, I mean, he will have no value outside to prove that paper. So therefore, we are of course definitely going in by the documentation of those assessments and certifications. And that is what we call as the assessment. So all these 5 steps or the 5 pointers will empower learning after following this particular digital model. It's just digital model gives a different concept which talks about digital ecosystem. Unless digital ecosystem is well in place, it will not help the faculty and the learners. It has to go beyond the content and the skills. Now this digital ecosystem comprises IT infrastructure at the institute, the digital strategy or the policies that we have talked about, roadmap, and also customer-centric policies. Now all this will help, they are all intertwined and they will impact the performance of the faculty and the learners. The World Bank report in 2020 after COVID was conducted to see how EdTech is supporting access of remote learning during this pandemic. There are the report gives the entire global report of all the countries. However, here I have just picked up what Government of India has done. Just as a one-liner I have picked up that Government of India has provided many free e-learning platforms, and all we are aware of these: Disha, ePathshala, Swayam, National Repository, and Swayam Prabha. All these are trying to help us in going digital. Intel and Fujitsu University, Fujitsu UK in 2018 conducted, of course this was prior to pandemic, but they conducted a study on finding out how many countries in Europe and some few countries in Asia are whether they are up to the mark in digitization or not. So what is the status? Now this is about a year and a half ago that they have conducted the study. Digital learning and technology is still an aspiration, not a reality. So we haven't reached the ultimate target, but still we are aspiring, and that's not bad. Aspirations definitely will help us in making it a reality. Digital literacy is quite low among teachers. So people are aware, but still teachers may not be fully literate in using those digital devices, digital tools. Most of the countries have poor connectivity, and they are, the teachers and the students are not using the devices which are compatible for learning the given content. So poor connectivity and unsuitable devices for use. Educational institutions around the world are balancing levels of access and security. So they want to give the access, at the same time have the cyber security laws and all in place. Now they are trying to improve the staff digital skills and the reliability of devices. So though the study is about 18 months ago, still it is valid in most of the part of the globe. Intel in its study has identified the skills that are required for the workforce in 2020. The study is conducted in 2015. So even 5 years ago, they had anticipated or they are expected that certain workforce skills would be required, which should be coming into picture today or coming into the reality today. First is deeper sense making. What does it mean? A person should be able to make sense in whatever he is learning or whatever he has got. So he should be able to think about it. It should make sense. So that language fluency should be there with him. Social intelligence, that goes without saying because we all talk about social intelligence or emotional intelligence. How do we interact with each other? How to communicate? So social intelligence is also important. Novel and adaptive thinking, a different kind of thinking would be required. Cross-cultural competency, because we are going into virtual scenarios. We'll be interacting with different kind of speakers, different kind of peers, colleagues. So therefore, we should have that competency as well. Computational thinking, which is extremely important in developing further skills also. New media literacy. Now, day by day, you'll find that the disruption is creating new media. We were not aware 5 years ago. Now, all these media are in place. So every time, whatever new media is introduced or has been discovered, has been invented, has been thrown open for the world to use, that literacy needs to be developed. Transdisciplinarity. Now, transdisciplinarity goes beyond interdisciplinarity. Interdisciplinarity may be with different uh, disciplines, faculty basically. Whereas transdisciplinary and transcends all the horizons and it's a global kind of scenario. So how will you solve certain global problems? So for that matter, you need to connect with people who are in different parts of the world. So that kind of research is, that kind of communication also should be there. Design mindset. Now, design mindset, after this COVID-19 has started, I have at least seen so many webinars happening on design thinking. Design thinking has taken is on the forefront now, so that people try to find out solutions with kind of empathy in their mind, at the same time trying to see the customer-centric products and services are devised. Cognitive load management. Now, load would be increasing more, but what? Of information, of knowledge. So how will you manage that cognitive load? So that's also the skill that workforce should require. Virtual collaboration, that goes without saying because we are in the world, VUCA. So that virtual collaboration skills also are required. Now, based on that, I realized, as Staton in 2013 said, the evolving value proposition for post-secondary education or higher education is they should be moving from knowledge acquisition to personal transformation. Now, this personal transformation requires lifelong learning. You should empower learner to learn on his own. Now, we generally use the term pedagogy. Pedagogy is meant for children, teaching children. We have later on started adopting the word andragogy when you teach adults. Now, we are going one step ahead and we have trying to talk about utagogy. Now, what is this utagogy? Utagogy is the adult decides what he wants to learn. The adult chooses his The adult starts about his thinks about his program that he wants to attend. The adult decides everything and he works on his own. So he is self-designer of his program. He is self-learner and goes on. So therefore, that is personal transformation. Now coming down to the questions of the day. How do we achieve this? Through well-planned paradigm shift in teaching learning process, and are our efforts leading us to digital upgrade or digital transfer? So I would throw this topic now open to the panelists. We will go, we'll start with Meenakshi madam, because she's starting with K-12. So we'll go for K-12 first, then we'll go to higher education, and then we'll slowly go to university education. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Over to Meenakshi ma'am.
Thank you so much, Vidya ma'am. A very good afternoon, rather good evening to everyone. It's fabulous being on this beautiful panel, and thank you for having me here. Ma'am, your introduction was just so correct with what we are thinking and how we are moving on. I'm going to talk from, as you said, from the K-12 perspective, and I've been a teacher for a very long time, and now I'm into training. Teachers are traditionally trained to do subject and lesson delivery. They are lesson delivery and subject experts. But when this pandemic set in the various parts of the country, teachers were introduced to the new normal. And with utmost professionalism and proactive attitude, all of us have said that they have moved to this whole online platform. This is where I feel bridging the skill gap is so important. Often we see WhatsApp videos where people are talking about parents standing behind the teacher and they are watching. We need to give them the confidence to teach online. Look at the camera and be very confident with what you're doing. That is where bridging the skill gap is so important. We are recording videos also. When recording videos happen, again, this can be distributed. So giving confidence to teachers is through the skill building, and that is the region we need to bridge the skill gap. At a very macro level, different schools embrace this situation in different ways. There are schools which have moved traditionally from what they were teaching in a brick and mortar school into teaching online. So what are they doing? They have just translated all the lesson plans that they had in a regular school, and by using PowerPoint decks and by using an online screen and even whiteboards behind them, they've started teaching. There are these other schools that have looked into the why of education. Why are we doing what we are doing? They went through and reworked the entire curriculum and the teaching model to cater to the needs of the students. Yeah. These are the people who are exploring the new normal, and they are deciding how to take it forward into a blended learning world later. In places like Bangalore, where there is traffic and there is so much of delay, this blended learning model looks very enticing for us in future also. At this point, when we look at the new normal and when we look at the everything changed around us, we are talking about little babies. We are talking about children who are from 3 years old when they enter our pre-KG to about 17, 18-year-old. So here, it is not just conceptual understanding. Here, it is not about skill development, but it's about all-round development. It's about emotional development. It's about social development. So just talking on the screen will not be enough. So what we did at Inventure is to look at how can we rework this entire thing so that we can provide all the experiences to the students like how we can do in our normal brick and mortar school. So we took over design thinking as one of our methods to do it. We went into classrooms, we went to parents, we took their feedback. Taking their feedback, we reworked our curriculum. We reworked our our online model. We looked at how many hours of screen time is essential. How can we teach? How can we collaborate with our students? How can we ask for students to collaborate with each other? How do we make our lesson very engaging so that it's not that student is just sitting and writing notes, but you have those different tools where students can just go and share their knowledge with others. So we are a Google Suite school. So we have been using Google Suites for a very long time for our internal communication. our written curriculum is on Google. But what we did not do is we never used an online platform like Google Classrooms. So the moment we went into this pandemic mode, and when we went into this lockdown mode, we went into Google Classrooms. We conducted our second term assessments for students over Google Forms, which went really, really well. After we did that, we went back to see how do we change this stuff. Yeah, we wanted to equip our teachers. That is where we started with two types of help. One is technical help. That is, how do we make them very comfortable with using the Google Classroom? We partnered with Google itself. They have a professional development partner. So with their help, we trained our teachers to use Google Classroom, how to organize the classroom in a way the child finds it very easy to go from one file to another. The second thing that we did is we looked at the MOOC courses, Coursera courses. We told our teachers to do a course on online teaching from University of New South Wales. The third thing we asked them to do is the Google certification. There is level 1 and level 2, which takes them through everything to have an engaging classroom. It's not about the tools, it's not about the content, but it's about how do we reach to our students, and that's what we were developing on. Once we got them quite comfortable with their with technology and using the online model, we went into the pedagogy part. We took them through how do you make your class more engaging using tools like Padlet. There are tools called as Miro, Canva. We use these collaborative tools for them to make students engage with each other. The second part we looked at was how do we check for understanding? Is only teaching important? How do we go and find out if they have learned what needs to be? What are the learning outcomes? Then we looked at how to check for understanding tools that will allow us to do. Google Classrooms itself has some fabulous tools where you can put the rubric and it will automatically give feedback. So we looked at those tools. We looked at little tools called as Kahoot, Quizzes, Quizlet. These are very fun activities for students where the teacher can create the quiz, the students can give the answers, and little medals come up. Sometimes when you finish a 30 minutes class, the teacher will give a 2 minutes quiz and you can see how students have done. And all this comes back as our results. So we have designed our lessons in this way, and this is how we are moving forward. At this point, we are moving from our whole school department training to individual training. We are looking at just-in-time teaching for teachers. How do you adapt yourself to this whole thing? What are your requirements? If you're finding it difficult to face the camera, can I help you out? So it's more personalized teaching and learning what is happening for teachers, training which is happening for teachers. What is really makes me happy at this point, ma'am, is teachers are really happy. Okay? They are so motivated to do something new at this point because it's like a new professional development where they are learning themselves, they are learning something, they are trying out, and they are getting the results. Yeah. So that is being really, really good for us. But there is also the other part where we are talking about the digital divide. We are talking about students who got this facility, teachers who got the facility. But what happens when they don't have the facility? I think as a country, as a nation, we should look at tools. I know Swayam, ePathshala, Diksha, they have a lot of stuff. I know that even DD has, a model where they are talking to students. I think as a country, we need to work on that and build skills for those teachers. We work with a government school. And for that government school, we do work with the curriculum for them, and we are seeing how we can transfer them into online platform. Actually, today, 100 Lenovo laptops, tablets have been given to one of the grades, yeah? And we are working very closely. But looking around, there are so many schools, right? How many government schools are there where we can go and help this out? So that's what I have to say. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Meenakshi ma'am, for bringing out the scenario and how you are trying to shift. But at the same time, we are still facing problems because of the numbers and also technology development that our country needs to have. I'll now request Professor Vikas Madhukar to present his perspective.
Yeah, a very good evening to all of you. I think the most point which Dr. Meenakshi has highlighted in terms of teaching, learning, and the platform, I feel that these points are equally relevant for the higher education as well. Because education is education. So basically, where we are looking forward for more interaction, more student engagement, and more teaching learning. Particularly with reference to the higher education, the Indian higher education ecosystem is huge. Today, we have close to 1,000 universities, about 50,000 affiliated colleges, and close to 57 million students who are enrolled in higher education institution in country. So, looking at this much big size, when we look at these institutions, that how far these institutions are equipped with online teaching learning, there is a big question mark on this, because the kind of demography, the kind of differences we have in terms of resources, in terms of capabilities, in terms of competencies among all institutions. We have private institutions, we have public institutions, and then we have institutions though they are located remotely. So when I look at this scenario, there are two important questions which comes into my mind. The first is the immediate concern that how education should be imparted and what tools should be used for online teaching learning. The second aspect is related to long-term direction regarding online teaching learning. What would be the business model post-COVID? How the higher education system is going to change, how it is going to change after post-COVID. So when I look at the pre-COVID area just 4 months back, I divide this institution in two set of category. The first category of institutions, those they were completely offline. Even pre-COVID area, there were no element of online learning teaching in their teaching pedagogy. There was a second category of institutions, those they were using some amount of technology online with their offline mode, maybe in form of blended learning. So the institutions which were completely offline before COVID, even they have adopted technology very fast. As we have seen in the previous discussions also, that within a day or two, all of our teachers on the online platform. And after 4 months, I mean, when we look back to the 22nd of March, when the lockdown was announced and everything was closed down, our teacher has immediately shifted to online teaching, and we were on the verge of completion of semester. The semester was completed, and even the end semester examination to final year student we have just finished on a platform which was internally developed by the Amity, because Amity was using online platform even before COVID. So we were into blended learning where we were using Moodle, we were using LMS, we were using our own ERP system, which is developed by our IT team. And this assessment system has also been designed by our IT team on their own. So what I look at the kind of change which was there, this change, the adoption of technology has actually accelerated. This pandemic has accelerated the adoption of technology, and what we have achieved today in terms of edtech in education, had this pandemic was not there, we would not have achieved this in the next 5 to 7 years. So, I take this in opportunities, and I feel that this adoption of technology is going to make a huge difference in the higher education ecosystem. Now, my second point, when I'm looking at how the business model is going to be there post-COVID, where there are people, those that think that post-pandemic, the model will change. Mortar model will be irrelevant. But that I do not think so. I feel that the brick and mortar model has no substitute. So our traditional model, I feel, is going to be very, very strong, because it is not only the teaching, it is the other aspects of learning also. For example, socializing. Why a student is going to a university, why a student is going to a big university, it is not only for teaching. So I feel that hybrid model is going to work in post-pandemic, where the institutions, those they were fully offline before pandemic, they are also going to adopt the online teaching. And of course, we talked about the blended learning approach. So it is going to be a blended learning, And I feel the teaching is going to be more customized, more flexible, more adaptive learning, more learner oriented. So there will be more improvement in education through technology, and technology can improve and supplement, but cannot replace the traditional brick and mortar model. So I see a lot of opportunity of collaboration. The previous speaker has talked about the collaboration opportunity and the depository of content, and there's a lot of things which can be shared. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhukar sir. What I feel, as you rightly said, that content delivery probably might be easier, but assessment is becoming really difficult. The same thing we have experienced with Mumbai University. They were still not sure as to how to conduct examinations because so many students will be appearing. And students who are especially in the final years, they need that certification. Not only that, some students are going abroad. So all these kinds of problems are being created just because we are forced to do it immediately. Had it been properly planned and all, probably our mindset also needs to be changed as to accept that. Because earlier, I remember very well, if there are two candidates, one who has studied MBA full time and one who has done MBA part online, people, employers were choosing full timers more than the online learning because the stigma that the online learning had. They felt that the education is not being delivered. There is no interaction. There is no internship. All these kinds of things were there. But now online learning is going to stay here. So our main job is to find out some kind of equivalence of the face-to-face education with online, wherein we can at least say that these both the degrees given by both these modes should be equal. So that mindset needs to be changed first of all. I think then probably things would be easier for us to even do that. Also, some of the skills which are transferred, or trying to be developed in the students may not be fully evaluated in an online situation. So as you rightly said, hybrid situation has to be there. So let's see how that works out, in future. Thank you very much once again, and I request Professor Antarpreet Singh to take over.
Yeah, good afternoon. I think it's late good afternoon or early good evening. So let me begin with let me have a quick comment on the new term which we are using. And I've been attending. I think this has been one of the activity which has been going on since third week of March. The webinars and virtual conferences, and in fact, in the morning, I was a keynote speaker for a conference with a leading university in Rajasthan, the International Research Conference. Now we are using the term new normal, and in every conference I say, no, it is not new normal, it is new abnormal. New normal will be post-pandemic, and then Dr. Vikas very nicely said we have to reimagine. Today, Times of India published my views and my 5 recommendations to UGC. This is in educationtimes.com. It will find its way in the print version in due course, wherein I have asked UGC that you are increasing. April, you increased from 20% to 30%. Recently, the online learning component has been increased to 40% from 30%. This is the time to think about post-pandemic. I mean, we all are very, and I'm very confident. I'm sure you agree with me. I think by December, January, we will have 90% normalcy. By April, Corona will stay as one of the viruses, like many other viruses in ecosystem. It will affect, but it will not capture our mind space fully. I mean, I think we are now getting out of it. The numbers, how many, we are getting back to our normal thinking and this thing. And so we are getting slowly and steadily out of that mindset of fear and this thing. So this is the time where we have to reimagine education. We have to reimagine blended education, rather, I would say. So I give one example, which I think you all would love it, although it is still not dinner time. So I say that the Margherita pizza is the cheapest pizza. If you look at the menu, the pizza which is only in 2 digits is Margherita pizza with no topping, and it will be for 95 rupees. And as you increase the toppings, as the pizza becomes exotic, and pizza then becomes 300, 400, 450. I mean, whatever price, and even more than that. So we are today in this new abnormal, we are in an online mode because there is no other choice. This is a margherita pizza we are eating. So we have to move to a blended this thing, and we have to add configurations, digital configurations on top of our Guru Shishya model. And as Dr. Vikas was saying, Dr. Vidya presented it very nicely. Meenakshi ma'am gave a very nice description of the entire ecosystem. Uh, this Guru Shishya model is not going to go away. This Guru Shishya model is the strength of education, learning all over the world. Whether you talk of Harvard, you talk of, I mean, pre-pandemic, I would see, uh, I would go to conferences in a face-to-face, and with due respect, several vice chancellors. I mean, there was deans, academic directors. There was more of a lip service, and barring a few private universities and some of the progressive institutions, IIT Mumbai, IIM Bangalore, ISB, there was very little digital deployment. And the moment pandemic happened, everybody jumped into the digital mode. And one more thing I would like to say here is that getting onto an online platform is just a small element. I can't assign a percentage, but just for the sake of simplicity, I say 10% of what the digitalization of education is concerned, whether it's a K-12, undergrad, higher education. Now, what is digitalization? And I mean, I say in my e-workshops or previously in my face-to-face workshops, there are two components. Digitalization, which deals with an education strategy for next 3 years, what is going to be my strategy? And strategy leads to portfolio development. So digitalization means strategy and portfolios. Now with this situation, and as we reimagine higher education, are my portfolios flexible enough? Can I increase my reach? Can I increase my coverage? Leveraging digital technologies with a flexible portfolio. Why should a person from a village come to stay in Bangalore and take a loan of lakhs of rupees and study? Why not that person study in a satellite center on in her or his own village and spend less amount and get more return on investment? Because education, digitalization of education is all about students. It's not about us as a faculty or staff or digital experts. It is all about learners and students. They are our consumers. It's all consumer driven, learner driven, student driven education ecosystem. And then the design thinking comes into play, where we design our curriculum. We then come into the digitization part, which is making our processes digital, making content development processes digital, capturing learning analytics digitally, measuring in whatever way qualitatively and quantitatively we can experience of students. And then the same experience goes back to your strategy, and then it impacts your portfolio. So this is, I mean, I say that there are two dimensions to the whole digital, whether it's bridging skill gaps or learning, education, skilling. I mean, there are very blurred boundaries. It's now cradle to grave learning. And I mean, so we let's not put them in silos. So I use two-dimensional model. I say digital classrooms. That is what we are doing now. We bring faculty and students in a digital classroom. We bring them in a virtual space. Uh, of course, it's very hard to see body language. That Guru Shishya model has a different version on the digital this thing, where the vibes, I mean, on the digital platform, there's no vibes transmission as they happen when you are face to face and you are listening to faculty. Faculty is listening to you, and faculty is also empathizing with your situation. I mean, that thing is not possible, but we had no choice. I mean, if you have no choice but only to eat rice and dawal, chawal, and that doesn't become your regular diet. You are eating because you are not getting vegetables for, let's say, 10-15 days. You are compulsorily eating that. That is why what we are in this stage, we are jumping on to digital platform. That is just a small element of the overall ecosystem. So first dimension is digital classrooms. The second dimension is digital in the classrooms. In the post-pandemic, how can we have digital classrooms? We go by, I mean, UGC would be reactive. They would from 40%, they'll again roll it back to 25%. Pre-pandemic was 20, so they will say 25 is the right number. So 25% or 30%. But the other part would be digital in the classrooms. Now, how do we put digital in the classrooms as we reimagine education? Would be what we are already having, smart boards. We have video panels. We allow students to take out their smartphones for 10 minutes and we have polling, we have interactivity. In ISB, we have done it with a very high degree of success, blending case studies with online simulations, which offers such an immersive experience to students. Adaptive learning algorithms, which you can deploy in the class. For example, I am from an HRO and OB field, that's my research specialization as well. Now, if I don't understand anything in finance, and I am in a finance class and my fellow batch classmate is very good in finance, the adaptive learning algorithm will throw more of materials of finance to me rather than to him, because he already knows finance. Maybe when it comes to HR and OB, then the algorithm will throw more of materials to my batchmate. So those are the things where you have an exotic pizza, because you are not taking away that base. That base is Guru Shishya model. And Guru Shishya model now has another configuration, the lighter configuration, which is online. But as we reimagine learning and we reimagine the entire overall blended education ecosystem, we move to digital scenarios where we have a rich blend of everything. We keep students at the center stage. We train our faculty on design thinking, on digitalization, on digitization. They both are two different things. I mean, digitalization is creating roadmaps, creating portfolios, which further impact your curriculum design, processes, development. I mean, as Dr. Madhukar was saying, or I think maybe I was also listening to the previous session, the content is, I think in the previous session also this point was being debated. The content is also very important. Whether we have to, I mean, content is a dish which you have to serve. I mean, whether you serve it in an offline mode or you serve it in an online mode, that is a crockery and cutlery which changes. But the dish has to be there to be served. That dish is content. Now, how do you make digital content? How do you have analysis? You have tons of data which comes out from the classes which are physical, from the classes which are digital, and mix of the two. And the mix is something which really makes me very enthusiastic about future of learning, future of education. And some of these thoughts were captured by Professor Vidya, is that we will move to exotic configurations on top of Guru Shishya model. So I will stop here. Otherwise, I think I'll keep speaking for another hour. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Antarpreet Singh. Actually, what I liked is that you started with Margaret Pizza, and then you reached to exotic pizza for us. Providing all the layers of the discussion, right from the differences of conceptual clarity between what is digitalization and digitization, both. At the same time, digital in the classroom and digitized classroom. So all these things, give the audience a very clear picture about what we are having and what we should be having. As you said rightly, that design thinking has taken a forefront, and teachers are also taught how to think in a different way now that is suitable to them. I would now request to Dr. Saili Gankar, the Vice Chancellor, ma'am. Please put forth your views.
Yeah. Good evening to all of you.
Good evening.
All my co-panelists, Dr. Naik, Dr. Anantapreet Singh, Dr. Vikas Madhukar, Meenakshi ji, Akhil Sahani, and all Aditya, Dr. Sandeep Sancheti, other co-panelists, those who were there in the first session, and now we are sharing few thoughts on especially how this complete momentum is taking in India, especially with the education. I think that's everyone is thinking on it. Everyone is doing a lot of discussion, deliberations to set up the system. And the reason we are aware of the fact that the COVID has created impact, and we were trying to get ready when PM Modi has announced long back in 2015 that we need to go towards more of e-content or e-delivery kind of stuff, especially online platforms. We started with that, UGC, HRD, both of them, AICTE, state universities, and a few central universities also. They took initiative to set up various mechanisms to deliver and address the issue. Especially not issue, the opportunity. They have realized it that it's a big opportunity and which will be creating a major impact across India, understanding the GER ratio, and based on that, they try to develop certain things. I still remember when Dr. Arun Nikvekar sir was chairman in UGC, and when he visited, and he was here from Pune in SPPU, Savitribai Phule Pune University. And we were talking about that now, how are we going to do that? So then we realized in university campus, we have EMRC department, which has been set up by the HRD ministry and UGC, wherein the complete setup is ready. And that's how they started thinking about, can we make a use of this and start working on it. I still remember in 2014-15, the proposal came on my table because I was working as dean. Sorry, at that time I was a director with the University of Pune. So they asked me that how can we create these contents and deliver these programs? And they were talking about two platforms, Swayam and Vyas, which was being started. We started hunting for people, right? Those who can come, prepare and deliver these sessions. Right from writing a session of half an hour, where you need to write a script. And after writing a script, you have to prepare the multiple choice questions, again, theoretical questions along with the answers, keys, case studies, again with the answers. So all that they were expecting us to keep. So we started looking forward, we started hunting, or we can say that identifying the resources that who can really work on this. Because preparing a half an hour script was a massive task.
No, 11 is fine. Yes.
And then they started thinking. So they started thinking that because the teachers were approached.
I will speak.
Yeah. So more than 20 to 35 top people were identified, and we tried to ask them that, can you really help us? But unfortunately, what we all were talking about, the same problem was there, that the content creation and content delivery was the biggest challenge for all of them. And third one was how to face the camera, how to conduct the session where you can really make the other person that he is in class. And that is what the criteria which we tried to find it out. And based on that, we did almost more than 70 films with UGC. And now the question is, again, because if you look at it, the kind of sessions which are happening in all the private universities, because I represent a private university, the LMS, classroom, the boards, digital boards are available. Even in classroom digital boards, you have your video cams. You can save your screens when you teach in class. You can record that. You can share it immediately with your student, those who have attended. Right? So all that facilities are available and which are being used by almost all the universities. And that's how the LMS is been very effectively implemented in all these universities. Coming back to the other universities and other, especially the area, I'm talking about the rural area where the infrastructure is not available, where internet connection is again a major challenge, right? And then again, the infrastructure in terms of students also, they do not have the gadgets in their hand. We assume that everyone is carrying a smart cell phone, right? So it's not the case. So we really need to address these issues. However, but when you look at the role of government, especially UGC and HRD, which we are talking about, right? If you look at their contribution, is a massive contribution, which has been initiated so long. So there are a few things which are to be explored by all the faculty members, teachers. At the same time, the students and librarians. I look at librarian, a person who has to be very acquainted with these skills and who can really play an important role to introduce these programs. So look at SWAYAM courses, which are online. So SWAYAM courses are providing good teaching learning resources. And these were earlier delivered on SWAYAM platform. And now all learners, they can see it, they can attend it without any registration fee. And I think that is the best advantage which can be done. So if you look at it, again, how many universities, how many the institutions are taking benefit of it, I think that's really questionable. The next one, which is launched by UGC, is MOOCs. And MOOCs especially, and the SWAYAM, both these the modules, or we can say the platforms, have created UG and PG program. PG in terms of non-technology program. And all these courses are archived. So can these students really work on this? Because this material is been prepared by whom? Faculty members, right? And they are, and these faculty members are all from India. So they know what kind of cases, stories, or maybe the experiments, the technology is available in this context, and that contextual setup, they are able to create it. So I think MOOCs is one of the great MOOCs, and again SWAYAM both. The next one is especially PG Pathshala. Here, if you look at it, it has a high quality and curriculum based. If you look at it, they have an interactive e-content containing more than 23,000 modules, including e-text and videos, and 70 postgraduate discipline programs, especially in the various faculties like arts, social sciences, humanities, mathematics, right? So one can go and explore it. Teacher can now use these resources to make their classroom sessions more interactive and more interesting, rather than preparing more and more content, because content creation takes a lot of time. It's not that easy. A faculty gets exhausted with that, and already APIs are there, and where API says that you have to publish minimum two research papers to get and that too with Scopus also, the whole mind is into the research. And again, going back to the classroom sessions and preparing the contents, I think this is the best option which one can utilize. Next one is, I think, which is very, again, they have e-content courseware, especially in UG subjects, ma'am. And these e-contents are more than 87 undergraduate courses are available, and more than 24,110 e-content modules are available on CEC, right? So cec.nic.in, if you go and explore, you will find so many courses and their.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt you. We are running a little behind schedule.
Okay.
So I would just request you to quickly.
I think let me complete this five different platforms.
Okay.
So that was the question which was been asked to me. So let me just give the overview of that, so that will help. Swayam Prabha is again one more, which is again 32 DTH channels they have. They are also delivering initiatives which are doing extremely well. They are also into art, science, commerce, performing arts, social sciences, humanities, engineering, technology, law, medicine. So these videos and lectures can be also explored by the faculty members and the students. CEC UGC also is one of the YouTube channel is also created by the government. Not only that, National Digital Library, this is I'm very much fond of. And here you will find a lifelong learner can really explore that. He can access from all kind of devices, and even differently abled learners can also use it. In question answer sessions, someone has asked this question, right? So National Digital Library, it provides a wonderful interface support specially in all leading Indian languages. So it's in Hindi, it's in English, and even few local languages. Shwadhaganga, people, those working on, especially, it's a repository, and more than 260,000 electronic thesis dissertations are uploaded on this. So again, this is again a resource for the research students across all the faculty. At the same time, and the last one is your eShodh Sindhu, which again provides access to the journals, peer-reviewed and core journals, core more than 15,000, and peer-reviewed journals are also available. Bibliographics are available, citations and all those things are available on this. I think under the sections which are there, the 12B and the section 1, which is the Act, they have taken all these initiatives for the education across India. And I'm sure that the faculty members, those who are attending, they will definitely explore this. We have done a wonderful tie-up at our university with Coursera, and more than 3,000 students have certified with the Coursera certification. All our faculty members, 500 faculties, are now certified with Coursera. They got all leading international universities across the globe, and that was one of the very we can say a rich learning experience across our university. So I think these platforms are available. We need to explore those. We need to collaborate. We need to discuss. And at the same time, few things are required to be taken care by the faculty member. That new things which we need to learn is how to do the appreciative inquiry in class, so that you can see that the student is engaged, student is learning, because nowadays on Facebook or WhatsApp, you can see many many images are being forwarded where grannies are attending the classes, parents are attending the classes, and students are not there, right? And that kind of the situation is happening. So how can we really make it interesting? And now it's not only one student, the whole house, the whole family is learning, right? And I think that's a great opportunity for all of us to create wonderful platform, share our experiences through the new pedagogy, which has been said by Meenakshi ji very well. I think that is what is required, and I'm sure that it's a great future, because we are good at adaptability. Indian employees, Indian citizen is good at that. We have a good amount of flexibility also, and that's why we picked it up very easily, and that can definitely help us to. And I think this particular shock or disruption has made us more Atmanirbhar and more self-sufficient now. So now the journey has begun, because we were into a very comfort zone all the time. We never thought that blackboard will replace by something else, and we never thought whiteboard will come. We never thought digital boards will come. But today, if you look at it now, the whole world has come together. No need to go out. Maybe the whole work system, the industry will change. Industry will revive. They will not invest their money in infrastructure. They'll ask people to work from home. And I think barring manufacturing industry, I think we need to think on these lines. We need to make the major shift thought process. We need to understand, and based on that, we educators, academic leaders can make a wonderful beginning for this era. And I'm very much pretty confident about it, because government is taking care of it. They have done a massive work. Let us take that in our hand and start our journey. We have already started. Now start running or have a speed. Without speed, it won't be possible for us to compete the whole world. So I wish all the best to all of you. Thank you so very much for allowing me to speak. I know Dr. Vidya Naik that have taken time. I think everyone has taken 10 to 15 minutes. So I thought, and teacher, you know it very well, we can't stop at least for 45 minutes. So thank you so much. Thank you. I'm muting myself.
Thank you, Saili madam. You have wonderfully brought out what government and what university is doing. At the same time, what UGC has also done, and introduce the participants, delegates into different platforms that they can use. Definitely, there is a lot of knowledge that could be shared on this platform. But because of time paucity, then we have to somewhere curtail, give just the guidelines and say that the people, as I said, they have to learn on their own many a times. Initial guidance is given. Later on, they have to go ahead and find their own way. Maybe a little tricky, but that's the, as we said, new abnormal now. With reference to whatever we have seen, I think, just one second. It seems there is no time for us to take Q&A session. So I will just quickly conclude with 2 or 3 sentences. Whatever I have observed is, first of all, we have to remain liquid to learn. We have to be liquid so that we can, take, as they say, water takes the shape of the container. So we have to really move ourselves very quickly. Not just one single improvement, but complete transformation. So we have not yet reached the end, but we have started the journey. And not just individual systems, but a variety of systems. So everything, basically is coming together at one go. Extensive use of digital assets is changing the needs of the modern learner. So we have to understand what the modern learner is and then try to create assets for them. Digitization is useful only if the technology also takes along with that. So technology also has to go hand in hand. One good business model that I've read somewhere is that value creation, value capture, and sharing will be a new business model for us. Of course, it is old, not new, but it has to be now applied to education at the same time. And the operating model would be scale, scope, and continuous learning, continued learning, so that we progress well. Effort should be made to combine space, technology, and pedagogy, which is rightfully said. And somewhere I remember having read C.K. Prahlad's book. He had talked about much earlier about n is equal to 1 and r is equal to g. I would just like to bring that n is equal to 1 concept here. When he said that n is equal to 1, n is a sample, is equal to 1. So in a competitive world, you have to cater to person, individual person, as Dr. Anantapreet Singh was talking about. You need to work out only on those things, personalized learning. So having a lot of information on the big data and artificial intelligence, as Google or as Zomato or as Amazon, they get all the details. The moment you click on something, flood of advertisements come. How? So likewise, can we collect data about students? Can we have some kind of a profile, digital profile of the student, match it with somebody who has got similar coaching facilities, and then connect these two is what we call as the individual coach person. That is one idea that came to my mind. Secondly, n is equal to 1, let me bring it further. That personalized learning is possible because Google or Amazon like kind of platforms or other digital platforms will create that kind of content and adapt, as he was also talking about adaptive learning, adapt the learning and help the child, help the student to learn best upon his needs. So as he was talking about, I will be given more finance modules rather than HR modules. So similarly, we can create content and what we create adaptive learning for the student to, make it very comfortable for him to learn. So with this, I close this particular panel discussion, and I thank you all the panelists for their wonderful contribution. Thank all the delegates for attentively. We are actually spilling over the time. At the same time, thank you organizers for giving us a platform for presenting our results. Thank you all. Thank you very much.